Hello, and welcome to the podcast Growing Older with Gusto, a podcast dedicated to highlighting people who are growing older in a positive and productive way. I'm Gail Zergerman, your host, and today we have a return guest, Sky Bergman. Sky Bergman is a professor emeritus of photography and video at Cal Poly St. Louis Obispo in California, and she has started her third chapter and just keeps going. It's amazing by creating films and projects that inspire intergenerational connections and emphasize the power of sharing stories. She was first on when she came out with her successful PBS documentary Lives Well Lived, which was followed up by a book called Lives Well Lived Generations. And that book distilled the wisdom from her film. Both were excellent. And her most recent film project is powered by joy, and it's called The Gelotologist. So she's going to talk a lot about that today, and we can't wait to hear about it. So welcome back to the show, Sky.
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much for having me. I love being here.
Thank you. Thanks. Tell my audience, like, how you initially got started with what you're doing and all the good work and just how it all came about. Because I know you have a really interesting backstory.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you again for having me on the show. I just love it. And I got started because I was looking at approaching 50. I was in my mid 40s and looking for positive role models of aging and not seeing them out in the media. And I'm 60, so that was about 15 years ago. And I think there's more now, but there certainly wasn't 15 years ago. And I had this amazing role model of my grandmother who at 100 was still working out at the gym. She didn't start until she was 80 years old. So, it's never too late to start something new, even working out at the gym. And that led me down the path of interviewing 40 people with a collective life experience of 3,000 years for my film Lives Well Lived. And it was my first film. I'd never done anything like that before, but I just was driven by this sense of curiosity. And I think kind of a very personal story of my own of wanting to have positive role models of aging in my life. And that kind of, put me in this trajectory now of being a filmmaker. So I retired from teaching after an over 30-year career at Cal Poly. And I'm filmmaking full time and loving it, which is wonderful. So,
well, and it sounds like your teaching career was like a natural segue into what you're doing. So many people retire and then they get kind of stuck for a while. They don't know, where do I go from here? What do I do next? So for you, that path seemed to be pretty clear cut, which is nice. Really, really nice. Let's talk a little bit about your most recent project with the Gelotologist. First of all, what does that name really mean? It's a great name, very catchy.
Yeah. So that is the film is about a man named Alan Klein who calls himself the Gelotologist, and he registered that and he trademarked it. He used to tell people that he was a gelotologist because that's a study of science and laughter. And people thought he made the Jello, and the wiggly desserts rather than
Right.
about anything about happy. So he changed it to Gelotologist, which I actually think is lovely. And it's really it's his story, but it's also about getting through difficult and challenging times with laughter and humor. And boy, we all need that right now. I think we always need that, but maybe now more so than ever. And he has written dozens of books and done a TEDx talk, and he's just a delight. And so it's been such a wonderful project to work on. It's really, I have to take on projects that I love because I eat, live, and breathe whatever I'm taking on. And so it's kind of in my whole being when I'm working on a project. And this has definitely been a fun one to work on.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching it. He was a delight. And how did you meet Alan?
Well, one thing leads to the next, and this is the way the serendipity of my life. And I also think that I seize upon some of these opportunities. So the person that did my audio descriptions for Lives Well Lived, and if you don't know what audio descriptions are, they are descriptions that people that are blind can watch a film and they hear what's going on. Somebody's describing what's going on. And this woman, Michelle Spitz, who has a company called Woman of Her Word, had sponsored doing the audio descriptions for Lives Well Lived. So she knew me through that. and she was friends with Alan Klein, and Alan was having a birthday party, and Michelle said to him, you know, you really should have a film made about you. You're so amazing. You've touched so many lives, and I know the perfect filmmaker that you should work with. And there you have it. The rest is history. You know, so
Great.
sometimes, but you know, it takes like following up on these things and making them happen. And I'm so glad that I did, because it's been so wonderful to work with Alan.
He has such a compelling story to tell. And I was curious, well, first, could you tell our listeners a little bit about his story? And then I'd like to know, like, how did you get him to open up? Because he talked about some pretty personal things.
Yeah, I think that, well, first of all, his story is that he originally was a set designer in New York. So he worked on shows like The Merv Griffin Show and Captain Kangaroo. And then he met his wife, who lived in San Francisco, and he was in New York, and he ended up moving out to San Francisco. And he started a silk screening business, and he and his wife had a daughter, Sarah. And then, unfortunately, at a very young age, his wife Ellen was diagnosed with a rare liver condition, and had there was 3 years where she was not doing well and passed away at the end of 3 years. And so he was left very young with a young daughter, and you know, and it was tough, a challenge, very challenging time. But one of the things that really helped he and Ellen get through some of the more challenging moments was laughter and humor. And he went back to school and for his master's degree, and his thesis was The Healing and Power of Humor, which became his first book. And he just went on from there to keep writing books and giving back in many ways, and doing lots of speaking engagements around this idea of laughter and humor. You know, when we're young, we laugh a lot, and then all of a sudden, as we get older, we suppress that. And it's so important, I think, to remember laughter and humor, especially in challenging times, and how that can lift us up and change our attitude about how we're dealing with things in that moment. It really can make a huge difference in all aspects of our life.
I wondered, was Alan's sense of humor innate, or was it something he developed along? Like, was he class clown when he was young, or he just?
No, you know, I think he was very shy and very quiet. I mean, he talks about that. He wasn't into sports. He was, you know, he liked to draw. So I think he was much more introverted. I think this is something that he's learned to develop. And I think that in doing all of his speaking engagements, certainly he has learned to be vivacious and funny, and, you know, really attract a lot of people and help a lot of people.
So how did you get him to really open up about
How did I get him to open up? That was the second part of the question.
Yes.
That I've heard. Well, I think that, you know, kind of like what I did with Lives Well Lived. I think people know my story. They know why I'm making films, which is really out of passion and because I believe in people's stories. And I think that when you're authentic, people are authentic back to you. And so really being my authentic self, showing up, also leaving the space for people to tell their stories, you know, because you're an interviewer. A lot of times when you're having a conversation with somebody, you're already thinking about the answer to what they're saying instead of just listening. And so I spend a lot of time really, truly listening to people and allowing for the space for their stories to unfold. And I think that is how you get those deeper stories, is really allowing for that time and for people to kind of trust you. And it takes time to develop the trust. You know, you don't go in and interview somebody right away. At least I don't. I developed some time having some conversations beforehand, meeting with a person and developing a rapport so that when I do show up with cameras, we're friends. And so you're having a conversation with a friend rather than a stranger. And that makes all the difference in the world, is that trust and that authenticity.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's Alan up to today?
Well, he's still doing speaking gigs, and now he's on the film festival circuit with me.
Oh,
with the
great.
film, which is really great. We had a great screening at the Nevada City Film Festival, and we're going to the Gig Harbor Film Festival. And you know, it's really wonderful for him, because I think when I when Michelle approached him about doing a film about him and his work, he was like, why would anyone care what I'm doing? And now when he sits with an audience, I think he's really amazed at how people are moved by his story. And I love that. I mean, he's 88 years old and he's just a wonderful human being. And to have that come back to you, because he's helped so many people, to have some of that positivity come back to you at this point, I think is just a wonderful gift for him.
How can people who are experiencing a challenging situation, whether it's losing a spouse or a dog or anybody, or just being in a rut, let's say, well, where would they go to find this joy and this jolliness, so to speak?
How do you find jolly?
Yeah, right.
I think, it's really, I learned this when I was working on the Lives Will Live film, because I think that one of the things that I learned that was a key factor in people living a positive life was an attitude, adjustment, I like to say, and having that positive attitude. How do you get that? Not so easy when you're in a rut and when you're down. But one of the things that Alan talks about is that, it doesn't have to be the big things. It can be the small things. Like every day he goes for a walk and he with his dog and he looks for faces in odd places, like happy smiling faces. So even trying to do some of those little things that can pull you out of your depression, I think is great. And I have found that now, because of Alan, I'm constantly looking for faces in odd places. And, he also talks about
trying that on my next walk with my dog.
Yeah, right. Try looking for faces in odd places. It's kind of fun, even like the sewer grate or you'd be surprised. And I think it just lightens your mood a little bit. I also think that when another thing that he talks about is that he kind of plays a game with himself of trying to say hello to as many people as he can while he's walking. And many people are buried in their phones. But I think you make that human connection with somebody, and that also lifts you out of whatever you happen to be in that moment. And so I think making more of those connections and trying to find the joy in the little moments. It doesn't necessarily have to be these big things. I mean, I think that sometimes, especially when we're in a rut or we're in a dark place, we think that joy has to be this big thing. And really it can be the smallest of things. I remember when my dad had a stroke and he was in the hospital and he was pretty depressed, and rightfully so, because his right side was somewhat paralyzed. And I said to him, Dad, I want every time that somebody comes into your room, I want you to say something positive to them, whether it's that, wow, you have a nice blouse on, or you have a beautiful smile. Say something positive and believe it's going to lighten them up and it will lighten you up at the same time. And so I think, it is an effort. But I came back to visit him because I lived in California. He was in Philadelphia at the time. I came back the next weekend and his mood had totally changed because he did that art of practicing just being grateful for the little things and saying something positive to somebody else. And it's amazing how that mind shift can really change you and pull you up lift you up out of that really difficult situation.
I just learned about something that's sort of interesting, and I've been trying to do this. It's called the 3-2-1 method. And every day you're supposed to think of 3 things at night that you really enjoy during the day. And then 2 things you're looking forward to tomorrow, and 1 thing you learned during the day.
Oh, I like that a lot. Yeah. That's good. I think that's good because I think, sometimes things get overwhelming and we just feel like, oh my goodness, we can't do whatever. But I think when you can break it down like that, I think it really helps to remind us that we have something to laugh at, we have something to look forward to, and we have something we learned every day. That's good. I might have to take that method as well. I like that. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And so what's next for you, do you think? I know you're busy on the book circuit, on the film circuit, going to the festival.
Yes. And I have 2 other films that are out right now. They're, The Gelotologist will be on PBS in the spring of 2027. And I have 2 other films. One is called The Mochi Movie, which is about
that.
Yeah. So that one, I'm actually screening this coming in like 2 weeks down in Santa Barbara. But that one is about the Japanese American experience as told through mochi. So it features George Takei, who, if any of you are my age, you will know was on the original Star Trek. just was like a little bit of fan crush when I went to interview him. But super, super nice guy. And he talks about his best childhood memory was making mochi in the internment camps,
Wow.
because, the whole community came together to do that. So even in the most difficult of times, food can get us through some of those moments. You're talking about what can you do? And sometimes
Right.
food is one of those things that helps us move through. So that's the mochi movie. And the other movie that I absolutely love that I've been working on and is near and dear to my heart because it's called The Primetime Band. And when I was in high school, I played flute, clarinet, and bassoon. And like many of these people in the band, it's a community band made up of about 70 people who are primarily in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and even 90s, who many of them put their instruments aside for 30, 40 years, and then come back to them later in life and play in this big community band that then performs throughout Santa Barbara County. And they also go into elementary schools and as part of a group called the Music Van and introduce instruments to third graders, which I love that, you talked about my description being intergenerational connections. There's one right there that I just love. These older adults going back into elementary schools to show these instruments to these young kids, many of whom never would pick up an instrument otherwise. And it's kind of like that paying it forward and that connection through music that I just love. So that's what I'm up to these days.
That's a lot. That's great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So anything else you want to talk about? I'm kind of out of my questions, but I know you always have a lot to say. That's something I might not have thought of.
No, I'm so delighted to be on here, and I love working on these film projects. I think that one thing that I would say to everyone who's listening is I never thought I was going to be a filmmaker. That was never on my agenda. I think follow your passion, follow the threads that lead you to these really interesting things. I mean, because I followed that thread of wanting to interview my grandmother, and then it led to all these other people, and then it led to this film. You never know how these things kind of snowball. And I think it was really from following my passion and my curiosity. I have a little Post-it note on my desk that says, over my desk, that says, your decisions should be based on your curiosity over fear. And so that's something that really fuels me, is that if something is kind of gnawing at me that I feel like I'm curious and I need to know more, then I follow that and I go down that path. And I think it's led me to some amazing friendships and amazing projects and a really interesting life.
And I think staying curious and staying connected are like the two most important things you can do for yourself as you're getting older. I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
I mean, like last
they're intertwined.
night, they're intertwined. Last night I used to, now I only host it in the summertime, but I used to host a women's dinner the first Monday of every month so that I could, because I was so busy, I just didn't have time to see all my friends. And I also wanted to make new friends. And so I would tell my friends, invite other friends. And my email list has grown to 150 people. Wow. And now about half of them show up. But, that's talking about staying connected. I think there's so many things that we can do to create connection, even if we don't have it in our lives. Just throwing a potluck dinner where there's no expectation. The expectation is that you're going to bring something for 8 to 10 people and have great conversation with the people around you. So I had people from literally 17 to 90 last night that were at this lovely dinner, and great conversation and great connection. So I think you're absolutely right that that connection, that sense of purpose, all of those things are really especially important at any age, but especially as we're getting older.
Right. That's great. So where can our listeners go to see the Gelotologist film, to see the Mochi film?
Yeah.
And
so
you are talking about the ice cream, right?
No, this is mochi. So I should have described what mochi is. Mochi is rice that is steamed and then pounded until it's kind of like the consistency of bread dough, and then it's made into little balls. And so that's actually mochi. Mochi ice cream was something that was like an Americanized version of mochi that you see in Costco and Trader Joe's. And
I thought you learned
yes.
too. Wow.
So what you notice is that when you eat mochi ice cream, it's very chewy because mochi itself is very chewy. And it's kind of a form of that. But like I said, that's the Americanized version. But You can find information about all of my work, my book, my films at my website, which is skybergmanproductions.com. And there's links to everything. If you want to delve deeper into any one of those films, there's links to see that. But that's kind of the landing page for everything at this point.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm out of questions, as I say. There's something else to say. It's been a delight to see you and have you on the show again. And we will keep having you on. The more you do, the more I want you to come back. And
all right. Well, I will come back with when the next films are launched, and maybe we'll in the spring when we're launching on PBS. That would be great.
That would be great. So indeed. To everyone listening, thank you. And please share this episode with your friends and family. And remember to stay curious and connected. Thanks, Guy.
Thank you.